Welcome to the channel. This is Reliable Ready. Getting a couple things uh, going here, and then we will go over the sole title name that we had. And that name is Discover Financial Services. So before we go into it, you guys know I'm not a licensed financial advisor. Just sharing my opinion with this analysis, trying to give you guys some entertainment. At the end of the day, I'm just a guy uh, trying to do what I love and give you guys some entertainment in the process. So, into the title name, uh, Discover Financial Services. I woke up this morning, I seen it was down 8% pre-market, and I had the biggest smile on my face. The amount of patience that I've shown waiting for this, oh my goodness. I've been waiting to punch into Discover for so long, and I believe the news catalyst that's drove it down for today is the firing of the CEO, and the big gap down was something dating back to false account claims back in 2009 or something like that. So probably gonna have some sort of short-term fee or fine that they're gonna have to pay off of that. I really don't know the most about it. All I know is that Discover is trading in the 90s. I was on the bid 100 flat here. I was on the bid 100 flat here and didn't get triggered. And I was sitting there ripping my hair out like, oh my gosh, I cannot get a fill on this name. I can't. I, it, there was multiple times over here where I was trying to get a fill, trying to come back into these previous highs at 98.50. It rips all the ways up to here. 120s. There was times I was even trying to get on the bid and get this name. I just, for some reason, I could not get a fill on the name, for whatever reason. And by the grace, by the grace of the Lord, we find a way to get it right off of this trend line that has not moved for months, for months. And if it goes down further, if it goes down even further than that, if it comes down to the all-time lows, I really wouldn't care. Oh my gosh. I'm just so happy today. That is why it is the sole title name. This is all I've had today. And we have three fills on the name. Right off the open, we got one underneath 92, and we got one off 92.50 right off this, right in front of this 92.44 gap. And we were on the bid at 92s, 92 flat. It's too bad 92 flat didn't come on in. We would have bought this all day. I'm not even kidding you. I don't care what the strength is. You guys know I love talking about strength. And, keep in mind that, just because I'm buying this doesn't mean that, oh, yep, to the moon we go. Uh, he bought it, so that means it's got to go up, right? No. Just because it said, I'm actually upset. I am very upset that this is up at 95 right now. Very upset. So do not get it twisted. Uh, but this is a true long-term investment for me. Uh, you guys know that normally when I come on here and trade, I'm trading some company that doesn't even make money. They are, potential, even some companies are potential that they could go out of business in the next couple weeks. You know, Sometimes that's part of trading. But Discover Financial has been one that I have had my eyes on for a very long time. And to get some fills on the name today, just regardless of what happens today, I'm chalking today up for a win. Hopefully it's able to trade back down here in these low 90s. I really would like it to just stop going up. Personally, I know that may sound crazy, but it's nice to hop on the live stream and truly talk about a long-term investment that I am not going to be selling probably for the rest of my life unless there's something that fundamentally changes with the business. There's no way. Um, So yes, that is the title name. Now, no, I'm just gonna set some alerts for underneath 90, 94. We're gonna put an alert down here at 93.80, and I'll still keep buying this name. Why didn't that alert hop on in? Add an alert. There we go. Create. So underneath those 94s, we're gonna think about buying some more shares of this. So I'm hoping during this live stream at some point in time that triggers. But if it doesn't, at least we were able to get some fills. Maybe it catches a bid, runs, tries to retrace through this gap, and then we come back down and trade near this trend line again. But this trend line, even if it cracks the trend line, if I were to mark some support levels, these low 90s through all of this, I'm going to be respecting it all the ways to the downside here. So very happy to get some fills, as you guys can probably tell. So now that we got those fills, let's see if we can go and find a trade. I'm in a very good mood. Uh, Actually, in all honesty, when I'm in a good mood like this, normally I trade pretty bad. Uh, so we're going to try and have some high conviction. Yesterday, the we trade, my bad, headset went out. The we trade, yesterday we were able to get that 25 fill right here, and we ended up getting stopped out on the break at 24. Ended up catching a bid early in the morning. We were trying to watch it, but had our eyes elsewhere, and we're glad that we didn't even think about trying it because, all in all, the crack of this trend line right here just kind of gave a retest to the bottom end of that, and I would say this looked like a clear short if I just left my chart the same way that it was. So, uh, very happy with that. Still a very good trade from yesterday. We even reloaded the full size on the pullback in here, and we were able to get all kinds of outs to the upside. And yeah, we made out pretty good on it. So we is probably dead for me today. So let's see if we can find a new name. I seen Invos, which strength-wise, I believe still isn't quite there, but it's very close. Off the open, uh, a lot of times I've seen this setup where you got your 34 and your 20 and your 21, and it gaps up over both. It gives a little wick down, and then this break at 10. And why do I say the break of this low, this 10? Is because it was those previous lows right there. As soon as you confirm that you got over that, we can even go back to a 1 minute, and you can see what happens is it wicks up to it on the very first minute, and then it takes that 1025 and then boom 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 holds as support and then rips. So just if you had your chart set up like this, you needed nothing else. All you need to do is mark that flat bottom break, boom. You gap up to it, kind of trade down, and then as soon as you reclaim that again, that would have been a very high level trade. Just by having one mark on your chart, would have made out very well on it. Honestly, you'd be trimming these levels up here for sure, coming into these highs and into that next set of lows. Even right here and right here, you can see you would have had a top wick fill almost, and you would be thinking about reloading in maybe off at the top end of this level right here. So just marking some levels on Invos. We're probably not going to be trading it because it's already up significantly on the day. It has a nice wick top that's coming in right there, and I don't think it's going to be one that we trade. Uh, in terms of a earnings name, C Limited was one that we were keeping an eye on, but this kind of gave me the feel of Docs. DOCS, where it had this trend line and it was trading right in toward that trend line right at the earnings report. I said, hey, I wouldn't be surprised to see this with a major gap down. I'll show you the comparison of Doximity. You can see if we go and place this trend line, and the way I had my trend line set was right off of that, right off of this first gap up, and you can see coming into the earnings report, we were trading right at it and a big gap down, and it had this same gap down here. And if we go and look back at C Limited, you can see C Limited does have a sort of gap fill. It's not as similar, but you can see it got very close to that gap. I wasn't able to look at the earnings report normally, and sometimes with these international companies that they don't update these earnings right away. So I kind of would like to see what type of EPS they put in. I could just go look it up real quick, but I would say that C Limited, high margin company in a growth style of a business, and you actually have some solid support levels in over here around this range, and just mapping out that previous high right there. If I zoom into this a little bit on this day, uh, Monday, or March 23rd of 2020, we gap up from this range, and we've never come back to fill this gap. We got very close, but now uh, I think it's very possible that we can get these upper 30s, and we're just going to let this one calm down the same way that I've done with Doc S. Doximity, we've been very patient with. We actually like the earnings report on Doc S. We look at it as it's a company that still is showing some growth. They're not diluting too much. I think they're actually buying back a few shares. High margin, no debt. They only have like 13 million in debt. Uh, and those are the companies that we're looking to find uh, be different with. You know, the market clearly had something that was wrong with the earnings report. I look at it as if, you know, as long as they are no debt, they're continuing to grow, and they continue holding these high margins, we think there is very good potential with this company. So that is what we're looking for, but also showing the patience to hold strong and not be, you know, rational or not be irrational is the right term that I wanted to use. But other than that, looking at these top movers to the downside, I'd say if the clear, obvious name that I would like to trade is DFS, and had this continued trading to the downside, that would have been the name that we traded all day probably. We would just kept buying it as it dropped and wouldn't have even thought twice. But keep in mind, you know, that the portfolio sizing that I have on this is still relatively small compared to a long-term investment that I'd be looking for. So do keep that in mind that it's not like I'm punching in a huge portion of my portfolio into this. Looking back, you could say, "Oh man, you should have." No, if I'm looking at a long-term investment, I'm looking to build it up to about a 3% with high conviction. And if I have it built up to that 3% with high conviction, then I have no problem building it up to a 5% if it keeps dropping further than that. So that's what we see. Oh, Mr. Drift, how we doing, brother? Nice to see you tuned in. All we've done today, and I forgot, I shouldn't say all we've done today because we did have a good till cancel order on Disney for this 87.50. We're just respecting this gap fill right there. Triggered in, I forgot that did fill. Uh, but honestly, you know, with it trading down like this, I wouldn't be surprised to see it maybe come back down to these 85s. And down here at 85s, I would say it's setting up a flat bottom break where if it gives up 85s, you could see a large gap down. Maybe some type of day where it gaps down to these 84s, tries to hold, and if 84s give up, uh, you have some wick lows down here, but all in all, I'm expecting this 73, I believe. 72. I was off by $1. The $72 gap is what I would be expecting to fill. Uh, Possibly. This is what I'm looking for my downside risk where, okay, I build my position out and in this support level, it gives up that support. Okay, let's show some patience. Let's see how far it can actually drop down, and let's try it down here if it wants to get down there. Good, and you? I'm feeling fantastic today, Drift. You probably weren't here for the very beginning of the stream, but I had a huge smile on my face when I seen Discover Financial was down 8% in the pre-market. I almost couldn't believe my eyes. We've tried to get into this name since like May, and we just haven't been down over here. We were saying, hey, we come back down to this trend line right off this gap, we're buying it all day. And it ends up ripping to the upside multiple times through here. We were trying to get fills. And I believe this day was a crucial day because it gapped up over this neckline. I was like, okay, if it comes back down into this gap at 105, we're buying it. And weren't able to. Even a couple times over here, I don't know why this line's here, but I'm pretty confident that, had we come back down to like 113s from on the earnings day, I would have been a buyer, but it gapped down all the ways through that. And I'm like, okay, let it breathe. Give it some time. Now on these couple days, you see the wick low. We'll just mark the wick low of this green candle right there. We'll bring it a little bit left. You see the low right here is 150 cents. We were on the bid on the earnings day at 100 flat. We were on the bid on this day at 100 flat. and we were never able to get a fill. And I was sitting there ripping my hair out. I'm like, I can't get a fill on this name. This is absolutely unreal. And now to be able to get some fills on this name in the low 90s, I couldn't be happier. Couldn't be happier. Now Drift, you know me. That doesn't mean that I'm saying, hey, this is a sure thing. Nothing is a sure thing. But this is something that I'm probably going to be holding for potentially the rest of my life if nothing fundamentally changes with the business. So that is how happy I am. So regardless of how crappy I trade today, regardless of what else happens, I'm going to have a great mood all day. There's nothing that's going to be able to break this mood that I'm in today. So that's what I'm on today. I'm doing very good. So if you're having even 10% of the day that I'm having right now, I would say you're having a really good day, Drift. I can't explain how happy I am. But yes, looking for a trade. Looking at the SQ. SQ's been a name here and still flirting around this positive break. Uh, you got a gap up. It tries to fill the gap. You put a red engulfing down, kind of giving that bear that pull to the downside right there. So I'm expecting some a little bit of resistance built into there, and also has a downtrend. So if I were to go to the Nasdaq has this same uptrend on it. Let's just go over to the TQQ since we're on the SQQ. And you can see we have this same sort of uptrend built. So on a negative break, maybe it doesn't happen today, but if this trend line cracks, this is where I'm looking for this to go. Uh, down down to this flat top. Maybe it needs to work itself down there first, and maybe we'll start with these highs right here. Maybe this high right here, but off the trend line, I would say I don't know how much I would hold weight to this. It does have a gap fill right there. It has a gap right here. But I would expect this top and maybe some volatility to the downside may get you down to this gap. But down here near this flat top, I could really realistically see some downward pressure down to 28s on the TQQ. Uh, Devon Energy is also an oil play that I dipped into a little bit yesterday in those upper 90s, just a starter position, but I am punching along for this name. I thought their earnings report were pretty solid. Oil's been doing very good. You look at a lot of different oil companies are really catching a bid to the upside, where they're really trading up here in this third or fourth retracement, like this half and this 618. You see a lot of oil companies trading up here. And Devon Energy, I look at it as in they're reducing debt, they're buying back shares, they still have a solid dividend. They're increasing their production, their output of oil, and oil is still going up. So I see no reason why Devon Energy can't catch a bid. And I think punching in near these 50s, even if it does want to come down to these supports and these 40s down here, maybe if it even wants to go lower, I see a nice gap that can be respected down here. But I would say off of this flat top right here, that retest, that's middle 40s right there. So if this wants to come down into there, I'm just gonna keep dipping into it slowly but surely, just because I'm looking for kind of a relief rally where oil's doing good, other oil companies are doing good. Why can't Devon, which is doing everything that I want to see in a company do, why can't they catch a bid as well? So Devon Energy is the oil play I really had my eyes on. And then Enphase. Enphase, a couple times over here we were on the bid off of those 130 flats. And yesterday it got very close, 131 and a half. But the more I keep looking at, the strength just isn't quite there. I really want to get it into this window. And I have this window marked from 127 half to 117 half. So those are the couple of long-term plays that I'm really looking at, just trying to show as much patience as I can. But aside from that, I really don't have anything on my watch list that is going crazy. But I would say the SQ continuing to show some good strength right here, and it does have a downtrend that it's probably going to end up meeting at some point today. but still showing some continuation, and we are right at the low of this first pullback down through this gap. So you had a nice uptrend, you crack that uptrend, it holds, it retests, sets this downtrend, and trading a little bit now, catching a nice bid to the upside for today. So with the Nasdaq short ripping up higher, I'm not surprised that there isn't anything that I see off first glance. In terms of an oil play that I was wanting to drop down lower, and in particular this gap from 1266, I wanted to see this name really keep coming on down, but given the gap up today, it's got dividend coming up, so maybe there's a little bit of entry happening here, a lead up towards that dividend. I would say that a swing trade that we're playing is this Geo group. I was thinking about adding some more off of this neckline break here at these 740s. You can see the neckline right there. We're trading directly at it. Decent amount of volume coming in off these first couple candles, and a red candle coming on in testing this neckline. So if, DFS getting back underneath the 94s, yes sir. Come on back down. Come on back down. Get back down here. These lower 93s. This is going to be an area we're not going to be shy from punching in more shares. So let's just mark 93.25. If that wants to trigger, we're going to put our full attention to this name, and we're going to look to add some more. Let's look at some top volume movers and see if we can find anything else. Uh, mm, mm. Forward around these 12s is also something of interest. Is this? Nope. Uh, but honestly, I'm expecting it to try and come back down and retest this downtrend. This downtrend's probably not set perfect, but I'm going to respect it. And we do have a nice support level that has been holding. So if this wants to come all the ways back in, we have not had a single reload on the name yet. But if it does want to come back in, this is going to be a name that we think it's reasonably priced. I'm not a super fan of the industry that they're in. That's the car business, but I think there is potential with Ford, and if that wants to come into the 11s, anywhere in the 11s, I think is reasonable. If I'm just an honest opinion, that doesn't mean it's a home run, but we made out really good on Ford down here in the 11s, ripped it, had plenty of outs all the ways up to 15, and did not have a single reload. We're still holding a piece of it, so we held it that piece all the ways back in. Uh, so keep that in mind that, I've been holding this since we built this position out, and the last shares that we had bought was in May 25th. We have not bought any more shares since then. So if this wants to come anywhere close to that, this 1140 gap right here, I think is a clear long. That's my opinion, of course. But C Limited continuing to show some downside pressure. Down here at this gap fill at 40.80. Let's see where the gap is directly. 40.92. Potential that is something that we could try today, but I don't think that we will. Just because, we haven't actually looked at the earnings report yet. And also down 26, 27% on the day. Not going to be my very top choice. Trying to look at some of these top movers, there's just nothing that we really like. If I'm being honest, we're gonna cancel that. I would say you do have some sort of clear, maybe a wedge pattern building right here. ZI is another huge gap down name that we were keeping our eyes on, high margin company, but taking out those lows right here, we said, hey, we're going to be patient. We're getting a nice slope up right here, but no price movement matching it. So still showing some patience on ZI. Looking at Lumen, Lumen might be something that we would have tried had it done this yesterday, but coming right back into these 175s. If 175s can hold, I still think that this is a reasonable long to maybe try. Maybe not the greatest setup. There's only so much leeway I can give on this support level right here. Uh, and kind of maybe setting up a flat bottom break. But you can see the coil that we've had. So we've been really patient with this name, but it also does have a clear descending channel, kind of like that. So maybe we're talking about this in the 150s. Disney, so had some good shares bought off those 87.50s for right now. Even if the price does want to crack those 87.50s, I'm looking long term on this name. So it is what it is. Whatever it wants to do, we're going to evaluate it and we're going to decide what we want to do going forward. DFS still here at these 93.50s. And giving up 93.50s, we're about to get alerted. So maybe off the body of this candle, we can think about adding some more shares here. One would say, hey, you've had 3 orders off of Discover today. Take it easy. No, now that it showed me this bounce, I can't promise myself that I'm going to be able to keep getting these 90. So I would rather buy it here and have it crack support than have it catch a bid to the upside, and before you know it, we're trading back over top of 100 again. There's two different ways of looking at it, of course, but Discover is going to be one that we're going to try and buy more of today. I'm just so happy that it's gapped down like it has. I can't even stress that enough. So Discover Financial, this is going to be a lot of the main attention today. So if you're looking for a name that has more volatility and is actually green on the day, maybe just tune into the channel on a different day, in all honesty. But Discover is going to be the main name today. And when it's trading underneath 93.50, this is going to get my attention. Let's go start looking at the tape for Discover. And we're getting very close to these 25s. If I see it in those 20s at all, I have a market order ready to go. Aside from that, we are going to try and find something that we can trade that has some volatility and something that we think we can trade higher. But as soon as we are done looking at this Discover, and now reclaiming those 50s temporarily. Let's see if it can reject those 50s and come on back down. So based off of the 3 fills that we have on Discover today, we have an average cost of 92.82, brand new position today. And here's those 30s coming back in. I think this is going to be good enough. We're going to add some more shares and we're going to set an alert on Discover for 93 flat. Just under 93 flat. If that wants to trigger us today, we're probably just going to switch over to the name Punch Market right away. So we'll see how that goes. Let's find something. Let's find something. I know you guys are probably like, Discover Financial. Why am I tuning into this guy? Looks like junk. Looks like junk. Looks like junk. Lift. Okay. Uh, Blem was actually a sticky note name from the beginning of the week. Uh, this trend line was something that has been sustainable since the COVID days, holding this trend line, building this wedge pattern to the upside right here. I'm just gonna peek back at Discover real quick one more time. So back up at those 93.50s. Yeah, we're gonna keep adding in these low 90. If it gets down near 93, we're gonna keep adding Discover today. Uh, let's see what that did for my cost average. Brand new position. Oh man, I couldn't be happier. I'm in such a good mood today that Discover gap down to 8%. I couldn't believe that when I looked at my watch list this morning. Absolutely unbelievable. But that market order increased our average up to 93.01 for Discover. Uh, so just because it's catching a bid right now, I'm actually a little bit upset. I would love to see this break down as much as it wants to. I want to see this trend line crack. I want to see it get down into 90s, even lower 90s, and I would love to see it get into the 80s. If I seen Discover in at the 80s, I'm punching long, not thinking twice. As you guys know, I'm just a guy, simple investor, uh, trying to give you guys some entertainment. But Discover Financial, me sharing my opinion about this, I'm probably holding this for the rest of my life. Just giving you guys a little bit of backstory. Probably holding Discover for the rest of my life. That doesn't mean that it's a home run. That doesn't mean that you're going to make a lot of money. For all I know, it cracks all the ways to all-time lows. I have no clue. Uh, but in my eyes, I have the conviction on this company that I believe it is a good long-term investment if you're looking at consistent dividends, buying back a ton of shares, trade at a reasonable PE compared to your Visa, your MasterCard, you name it. Blem Brands just got done paying the dividend. You got the negative break on this crack of support right into the trend line. Trend line's holding and now flirting with this sort of neckline. So, this probably isn't going to be a name that I'm looking to day trade. It'd probably be one that I swing trade more. So if it came back down in near those 25s, that is where I would be looking to play that name a little bit better. Looking at Geo, still trading in right at these 740s. Coming right in to those levels. And if this was looked at as a trend line, maybe we do need to come back down to the trend line, which meets in around that 7 quarter. But I would say you have a secondary uptrend that could be leading up to this green candle break. As soon as we got over top of that body, we can see what it looked like. Uh, and as soon as it took out those wick highs, nice push, retest, and now actually taking out the lows temporarily. ASTS, I know they reported earnings. Let's look at the 15-minute for this name. You can see setting up the red move below the green move. Setting up that, hey, this could be some sort of descending channel that is being made here. So let's see if it can break through that in one way or the other and go from there. Discover Financial up to those 93.70s. Okay. Not what I wanted to see, but it's fine. Looking at some of these other movers, C Limited continuing to show this, the slower it gets down to this gap, that's at 40.84, that could be something that we wanted to that we could try. Take a look at AMC. Eh, doesn't really look that great to me. BMY Bristol Meyer has continued to set up this flat top, but looking at the bigger picture, I would say this trend line is where I'm wanting that for this to give that curl, that frowny face, and come back down to this 60 flat. 60 flat, I think on Bristol Meyer is a reasonable long. When you're talking about a company that's putting in 175 non-GAAP EPS and a EPS, a GAAP EPS of $1, pays a 60-cent dividend, so you're looking at 4%. Next earnings already projected $1.80 at $61 for $1.80. I mean, this pays off the investment. If they can continue showing that slight growth, and even before they were right around these upper, right around $2. So if they are putting, let's say, $8 of EPS a quarter, you're looking at paying off this investment, or $8 of EPS a year, you're looking at paying off this investment in 8 to 10 years. That's right around that window. I'd say is reasonable for punch and long, basing off of EPS. Just my opinion, but. Invos. This is really the only name that we're seeing anything but a lot of wick tops and this but it does have some sort of ascent right here, a tight channel to the upside. If you're just marking the bodies, very tight channel to the upside. Uh, Not something that I want to trade particularly. SQ continuing to rip to the upside, breaking through these first lows, and like I said, I wouldn't be surprised to see this trade up to this downtrend. I'd say Blem, actually chart setup wise, if this pulled back into the 25s in any way, shape, or form, I think that could be a reasonable long to look for. And Discover trading back down to these 93s, these lower 93s. 93.27 is the low of this candle. Looking at Match, I actually did like the earnings report on Match. And this reminds me, I should go look at. We're just gonna go and rinse and repeat since I'm not really finding anything here. Let's just go look through. We can go take a look at Warner Brothers real quick and Devon because we traded both of those yesterday. Warner Brothers wicking into this neckline, I think is a reasonable long. You have strength on your side. You have a nice green volume. It is decreasing, but you have nice green volume on this move to the upside, and matching out how we had this marked before. We had it marked as a wedge pattern, sort of like this, and it gave you a clear break of that wedge, and now testing the back test, or testing this original neckline break, I think is reasonable. So we are a little bit red on the position as of right now, but I think the chart setup is reasonable enough to think about it. And Devon Energy, let's go take a look at Devon, giving up those 50s and red engulfing straight to the downside. Is there something here that we could say, hey, this looks pretty good? And yes, there is. I would say right off of you're trading right at this neckline, which it breaks it and backtests it, catches a bid. It's trading in a little bit below that as of right now. But I'd say you even have a trend line as backup if that doesn't want to go your way. Maybe this is a day that we just trade the TQs. We think that it's weak, but we do have a trend line that is here. Jeez, how far did I set this? I would say if you were looking at a trade for the day and you are just struggling finding something, this TQ probably isn't a half bad choice. As bearish as I am on the market and bullish as I am on the Nasdaq short, I would say this is probably a reasonable area where you could try a long. I mean, for all you know, you could maybe catch this a bid up to these upper 39s. Hold a piece. If you're lucky, you get a neckline break. Look at the top volume for the day. Invos putting a nice green candle to the upside. Neo just continuing this stair step to the downside here. Oh, let's put an alert on C limited right off this 41. This is a pretty decent look right here on TTOO Bioservices. Just marking this high right here is a retest. It rejects it early, breaks it. Now if it pulled back in 245, you have the increasing volume. Ton of volume too. Let's add this one to the watch list. But right at that 50 level, let's see if we can map out some levels on this name. Lift could be something. Has the volume, has the move to the upside, now given the pullback, couple wick tops, so I'd say a 1250 break. Once you get that, you probably feel pretty good about it. So possibly lift here. We are on candle number 3, so if there's one to come back in closer to that 12 flat. Look at all these names right here. There's none that are really trading volume. We had Home Depot. I'm gonna go trade Home Depot. CPRI has 1 million. Haynes Brands has some volume. Bristol Myers has a little bit of volume, but nothing else really has much volume whatsoever. Let's see if we can find any red the greens. Vale. I think Vale is a legitimate long-term buy, but just a weak name. And if we were to mark out this trend line that's cracked, we're going to play it as low to those wicks as possible. I would say, possibly off of this long-term trend line. Just paid the dividend. You have no strength. MO, I would say also a trend line break. Uh, Two names that I am long in. But looking at both of them, I'd say, if you were looking for some sort of trend line play, MO just gave up this 43 half support, so maybe it's not. But I think value-wise, I think both of them are reasonable. Nikola trying to hold the gap, but just not able to. So it gaps up, comes into the gap, has some buyers. C limited down to 41. So let's see what this has in store. Let's go put a little bit of time into looking at the earnings report. We go pull that up on the off screen. Total revenue increased 5.2%. Gross profit increased 33%. Total net income compared, they did have net income of 331 million, compared to a loss of almost a billion. GAAP revenue increased by 20%. Let's look at total revenue. Less cost of goods sold with more cost sales of goods. I'd say that's positives. They put up actually an EPS of 57 cents, which looking at this, looks like they missed a little bit on their. I just want to take a look at the share count. So it looked like a significant increase in shares where they diluted 12 million shares year over year, but wicking very close to that. Ooh, discovered back down to these 93s. One would say that this is probably going to break down, but I'm still going to try and order right off a 93 flat. And we're going to put an order right off those 93s. Which is my cost base. So that'll will put me at an even cost. If it breaks down lower, great. If it goes higher, great. I'm looking at these C limited earnings. They're really not 30% to the downside that bad. Uh, but obviously, somebody maybe knows something more in the fine print. Who knows? And we are going to get that gap filled right here. It looks like it is filled. So let's go watch C limited here. Wicking into that gap for now. Let's try this C. We're just going to start small size. If it gets back underneath those 90s, we're going to try and add a little bit here. Wicked right into that gap. You guys see that? Order right off that gap would have been absolute butter. If it wants to come back down into those lower 90s, I think we're gonna try it for just a little bit. We are into those 90s now. Trying to hold these 41s. We can look back at Disney as well. Disney's still giving that nice churn test of 88. So it had some alright shares bought there. So it's not all negative for today. C Limited, man, I should have just tried it off that gap. Look at that wick. Talk about identifying a wick low for something that's down almost 30% on the day. How about that? Huh? How about that? Um, Looking at the low for Discover, looks like 93.03 is the low. I would just like to see this come back to this price where we can try it. Trying to hold these 41s for now. You know, let's just try it right near these 41s right here. So we did get a market order in for C Limited, and right when I tried it, it gave me that little pop to the downside. That's all right. Um, Not the most amount of size, but I think this is a reasonable area to try and punch long down near these lows. So let's see where our fill came in on C Limited. We basically got 41 flat, 41 and a half. As long as it's holding above those, let's just put an alert in and we have a market order ready to go. If that wants to trigger those underneath 41 again, we'll give it a shot. Discover just barely didn't give us that fill off 93s. TTO candle number one, we have 2 minutes left on it. But first red candle on nice increased volume, but the volume is still very high with it being not too much wick of buying pressure there. Yeah, so different kind of trading day. Trading these names that are down so much. Normally, the other way around. But I'd say C Limited is one of those names now. So we're gonna just change the title name a little bit to the names that we actually have bought. And we're gonna add Disney. And we're gonna add C Limited. Still only in the first hour of trading today. We do think we are going to find something that is reasonable. Other than that, yeah. So a different style of day trading C off of this 41 flat, Discover off at 93, and Disney. Let's go take another look back at Disney since that is a name. Respecting that gap fill off of this 87.50. Uh, Still could, trade back down and kind of give out this support level. But that's what we've traded today, so it's a little unorthodox, but C limited catching a nice bid. We could have had that order right off that gap fill, would have had the wick low, and I'd probably be sitting here saying how many people can pick you the wick low. It's only the wick low for right now. So if this wants to trigger, let's move this up to 44.99. So if it gives up those 41s again, we can try and add a little bit more and average a few shares. And honestly, if it gives out this gap to the downside, you look over to the left. Let's just mark this wick low over here. And that brings us down. We can play maybe that 40-50 level for a false break of those lows. Uh, I would say this is a reasonable area to think about punching long for the name. I just went and briefly looked at the earnings report, and I think the earnings report is not 30% down type of earnings report for a high margin company. It probably doesn't have it pulled up right here, but I'll show you the catalyst for C Limited, uh, where if we're looking at the quarterly, they only put up 3 billion revenue, but let's just focus on uh, very high growth company. Look at the quarterly. Okay, that growth has slowed down. That's reasonable. The shares outstanding, you do have some share dilution that you're looking with, but a higher margin company up in those middle 40s. They operate profitable and they are operating on a free cash flow basis as well. Uh, on the year last year, they weren't. But in terms of free cash flow, they put up free cash flow in this quarter. I see it as a reasonable company to maybe try punching long. You see the gap basis, they were profitable on the quarter as well. So even though they missed on revenue and missed on EPS by a little bit, I still think it's an all right area to maybe think about punching long. Is this support going to be able to hold? I mean, I don't know. And there it's just crossed over briefly. There's 40.88, so let's go over and try and punch in a few more. Let's see if we can get those 90s again. Let's go back to that 15. Continuing the wick down into this area, so that wick low came just a little bit higher than the other wick, and there's 85. So let's punch in for some right here and see if we can catch a bid. As long as it is in that middle ground right there. So let's see what we got for our fill right there, and we got 87s. There's 90s. If it wants to catch a bid further to the downside, we're gonna think about averaging in more at the bottom end of this, which would be the wick low for this support. And DFS crossing over 93, so we got to fill on some more DFS, and I think that is for now, unless it wants to come back down into 92 half. Let's just set an alert off 92 halves. So if that alerts us right there, we are going to go try and add some more. But right now we are focused on the C limited, playing around this 41 level. Look at the top movers real quick. Looking at the SQ, kind of showing those wicks. So if I went over to the TQ, when we were talking about this down here at this neckline, we said, hey, if you were looking for some sort of play just for today, we think that this can catch a bid up to those upper 39s. And that might not seem like a lot, but off of that support level up to, 1.5%, on a day that we're struggling to find some stuff to trade. We didn't mind the lift little setup, and maybe this could be something here off of these 12.15 if I wanted to start an open order playing with this first candle as it's holding above that. So right, 12.10 we just marked right there. Maybe that's something. Looking at C limited, still fighting to get back over top of that level, and DFS putting a red candle down near this 92.50. So maybe we can try and order right off of 92.50 for DFS, and let's just go ahead and do so. So we're gonna try and put another order right off those 92.50s. We'll go right off the alert price, 92.55. C Unlimited, trying to reclaim those 41s. Is it gonna have the buyers to come on in for those 41s? And just keeping an eye on this DFS. If we do get triggered, we are gonna add some more shares of that. $92.65 on a red candle to the downside. Are we going to get the buyers in right here? We'll see if we get triggered on some shares here. After this 92.55 buy, we're going to wait for right in front of this next line of support that we have marked. And if that fills, it fills. If it doesn't, it doesn't. $92.64. C limited finally reclaim those 41s, and that buying pressure right there off of that is what we want to see. So holding above 41s for now, not a bad start. I seen it tap 55 right there. I'm gonna go check and see if we got that fill or not. We did get the fill off 92.55, so we're gonna put a pause on Discover, and if it wants to come down, maybe 92. So let's put an alert off 92s and see where it goes from there. Ripley, it's okay. You're okay, puppy. You gotta go potty, and the dog's gotta go outside. You gotta go out. You gotta go outside. Okay. I'm gonna go let the dog outside. I'm gonna come back and we'll see where the both of these are sitting. Hopefully, I don't think it really matters where they're sitting. I'll be back. And we are back. I see limited down here at this next line, so let's just go ahead and just punch in for a little bit more size here. Let's wait for it to come down back into these 60s. 70s are trying to hold. There's 60s right there. Let's wait for it. There we are. Okay, so we added our last piece into C limited right there. We are going to give this how much room? How much room are we going to give C limited? We could give it underneath of those 40s. So like 40, 40, stop. Let's just mark 40, 40 right here. Discover, giving up that support level. Wick down to those 92s. So we can watch this off 92s. Nice red engulfing candle right down to 92.01 is it looks like it got down to 92.01. C limited. Just because we added a little bit more there doesn't mean that this isn't just going to reject the previous wick and wick down lower. But back over top of that gap fill, so looking at this daily candle, you're going to see uh, right at that gap, on the day, does it close above that gap is what we're asking ourselves. Discover, on the day, does it close above this gap fill at 92.40, 92.40, where is it at 92.44? So those are the two things that we're going to be watching. We're going to be watching C Limited and Discover Financial. So let's take a look at some of these other names. TTOO. I'd say this is probably the best setup right here. Has a decent decreasing volume on this candle right there. But does it need to pull back in a little bit further, and maybe something is worth trying there. Marking the wick top right here. Is it going to come back into that area? Yeah, tough to say. Lift is also another one, but you know it does have this resistance built in over here. Just marking some of these wicks that is meeting up with that wick top right there. Body candle, couple wicks. It has one day where it trades above that. Is that going to be enough? C limited. Are these lows going to be able to hold? It's very tough to say. I'd say 40-40 is going to be the out on the name. Discover, we're punching long. You know, if it shoots lower than what it has already, then by all means we are going to uh, be okay with that. We were punching long, thinking long-term mindset with the name, and going from there. Trying to scroll around and find anything else. Take a look at GMBL. Actually, holding full candles, which normally it's just a chop fest of blurry candles that you can't really see much. But getting closer to exiting that oversold area. TTO into those 47s. This is candle number 3. Nicola, red or green to red, and now from red back to green. C limited now back above that gap. So we did have a good ad down there in those 60s. Uh, but really just going to give it down to this stop. You know, it's holding, trying to tap in the 41s right now. And Discover, you know, kind of trying to hold these 92s. You know, just looking at Discover, I would say this is a support level that I'm very interested in. You're looking at a company that's putting up $3 a EPS, trading at 92. They put up what they put up last quarter. They put up 350. What they put up the quarter before, 350, 370, 350, 4, 420, 350, 350. So let's just do some simple math here. Just some simple math. We'll say 350 is pretty solidified. Times 4, we're looking at $14 of EPS a quarter. 92, we'll say 92 flat, divided by 14. 6.5 years we're looking at paying off this investment. And, you know, I think that 350 in the short run, yeah, it might work out. But we look at the amount of shares that this company is buying back quarter after quarter. One high margin company trades at a premium. We're looking at about a 6 PE at current price. I don't know if it's calculated in this 10%, so maybe even trades at a little bit better of a premium. We look at the quarterly. Is it updated? It sure is. Uh, but you can see the consistency holding above that 3.5, operates at 45%, free cash flow margin of 55%. We look at the shares outstanding. You know, just in the last 7 quarters, they bought back almost 50 million shares. We look at the annual since 2014. You look at the EPS growth. Why is that EPS growth so high? Well, look at the shares. They go from 450. They've almost bought back 50% of the company, which they are currently sitting at 250. So we'll say they're sitting at 250. Over the last 7 years, they have almost bought back 50% of the company, which is ridiculous. So I'd actually want to calculate in, you know, let's say they're able to put up 450 average over the next 5 years of EPS per quarter. We're going to times that by 4. We're looking at 18. So we'll look at 92 divided by 18. We're looking at paying off the investment in 5 years. So if we can get that, you know, by all means, we are very interested in the long for the name. That is the catalyst that we're looking at here. So whether we're buying shares against strength or not, we look at this as a legitimate long-term investment. TTO wicking into those 47s just briefly, but the buyers are there. Maybe we get an opportunity where this can come back down in one more time. But other than that, I mean, these are the trades that we were looking at, and also this lift trade, which candle number 5 on the pullback. Is there enough there to say? But I did put a wick into that body candle high. I mean, if you wanted to give lift, you know, 10 cents of risk from those 12 10s, I think that's a reasonable setup. CLSK, couple of nice green candles there. You know, a retest of this flat top right at 670. Maybe it needs to come back down just a little bit more. We'll mark the bodies of the candle, but I'd say that's not a half bad setup itself. OPK. Look at the daily. Flirting around that middle ground, a nice hold of those 175s. I'd say you probably have a trend line as well. Sure do. OPK, really not a half bad look here. C limited still trying to fight with those 41s and Discover, you know, right back up to those 92.50. So, you know, 92 flat could have been that clear area where we could have maybe bought some more shares, but we have 6 fills on the name today. I think we're going to be all right. I think we're going to be all right for now. C Limited flirting with those 41s right here. We're at 40.97. Is this going to be the low of the day? Tough to tell. We're not really getting that huge volume increase like we could be. But now reclaiming those 41s, we think that we got a pretty good add in those 60s, and we'll see where we go from there. Discover Financial up to those 92.50s right here, and C Limited putting in a nice green candle right here. We'll see if this can get some continuation, but a decent start to that position that we just started. Talk about buying a knife. This is how I buy a knife. I identify a gap. I see if it has buyers off that gap. I said, hey, it did have some buyers off that gap. Tried it at 41. We tried some in the 80s, and we tried some in the 60s, which is the wick low from over here. So that is what we were looking for. If it can catch a bid to the upside from here, so be it. If not, so be it. Uh, we're probably going to give it to that 40-40. We're not going to even try and sell any shares because this wicking into this gap very well. It could be the wick low for some time. So if we're lucky, we can milk this up to the start of this gap where we're looking at, 45 a share. And if we're lucky, we can run this back up into the 50s. So if we just built our position out for that move back to 50, that looks very well. Um, Looking at Discover Financial, we're not even thinking about selling any shares of that today. But just marking that gap at 92.44, holding above that gap for now could be a good start to the position. TTOO, still right around this 48. We have 3 minutes left in this candle. Am I gonna find a trade? And I forgot Disney, the other name that we have not been able to look at much. But Disney, nice fill off those 87.50s. Trying to catch a bid to the upside. We'll see if that can get any further movement to the upside. But we think that we just added some really good shares on Disney. Uh, we were waiting for this gap fill. We were on the bid for that gap the day after the earnings. We weren't able to get that gap fill, but now today we do. So patience, potentially paying off, but a little bit in the money as of right now. C Limited still holding 41s. It's a good start. Discover still holding above 92.50s. Moderna still showing that downside movement. Are we going to be able to get these 88s that we have marked? We have this gap filled, or this fill down here is the movement that we're looking for the downside. So playing in those 88s is what we're going to be looking for. And then that gap at 82.50, which kind of meets in with a neckline retest. So you have a left leg, build the neckline, you set a double bottom, you get that extended right leg if we're marking this for some sort of trend line. So as soon as it cracks this, I'm sure we're going to have some sort of gap down. So we're going to mark that all the ways through. And we sure do. And we gap down. We try the gap back over it. And one final retest of the bottom end of that before. Shoom. And now here we are. When is enough selling pressure going to come in? And we think 80 or 90 to 80 is going to be that area that we're looking for. C Limited giving up 41s for now. Weak name, so we're not surprised. Not surprised in the slightest that it's giving up 41s. Kind of a washout top, but at least showing us that, hey, maybe we can start trading sideways and go from there. I'm sure Discover Financial is looking very similar. Thirty seconds left in this candle. We'll see if we can get any buying coming in at the tail end of this candle. TTO indecision candle got down to those 47 halves, which could be the wick low for the short term. If it wants to start building this kind of U shape, if it wants to reject lower, maybe down to 45 is where we'll think about it. If I was gonna try one, I'd probably try lift and give it down to that 12. Oh, that reminds me, I gotta check the schedule for the day. C limited right at 41, Discover right at 92 half. D DCTH is what I'm seeing. DTCH. DCTH. Let's see what this is all about right here. Uh, Catching a bit to the upside. You know, nice volume when it takes out that high, or at least attempts to take out that high. Let's see what the daily's looking like on this. Huge amount of volume for the stock. 60 million on $6 a share. And I am gonna go put an alert on C limited. We're gonna put it below the lows. We'll put it at 40.70 right here. We'll go 75s. Ah, geez, I gotta take this call. I might be gone for a little bit. I'm actually just gonna call that a live stream. I gotta take this call. I will catch you guys later. Appreciate everyone who tuned in, and we will see you tomorrow, same time. Deuces.